Hey guys, Explorer 4 here, Horrorboy 465. Welcome back to some more reviews, and finally getting back to the review scene. As you guys know, it's been a little bit since I've done a movie review, and I wanted to apologize for that. It's just been, this past week has been very hard for me to do videos. I've been really busy with school and other things. I'm at a point right now in my life where there's a lot to plan, a lot to figure out, and I'm basically really busy with life right now. But, I'm definitely still trying to make time for YouTube, and I'm still trying to get on here and do movie reviews for you guys. But, right now I've just been really busy, and I've been unable to find time to do videos. But I did know that I wanted to at least review 2 movies from this box set that I got. It's a 50 movie collection, horror classics, and I wanted to review at least 2 titles from it right now. I wanted to review the movie that I'm talking about today as Nosferatu, and the movie I'm talking about tomorrow is this movie, The Phantom of the Opera. Now, I chose these movies because Nosferatu I've been wanting to cover on this channel for the longest time. I'm a big fan of the movie. I think it's a brilliant film. I think it's a very important film, and I've been wanting to talk about it on this channel for a long time. And The Phantom of the Opera, never seen it, but I definitely want to give it a watch. And I've always wanted to check the movie out, so I'll be giving it a watch, and I'll be reviewing it tomorrow for you guys. There's other movies on this box set that I want to cover. I know that when I get done reviewing like the Jeepers Creepers franchise and the Final Destination franchise and Creepshow franchise, after I review those franchises, I wanted to cover one more movie, and that's The Hunchback of Notre Dame, because I always want to check it out. It looks pretty interesting, and I'd like to give it a watch. And there's other titles on here that I'd like to give a watch to. I mean, there's Metropolis, there's The Bat, Bloodlust, Dementia 13, Dead Men Walk, House on Haunted Hill, Attack of the Giant Leeches, which sounds fun, Nightmare Castle, a movie called Maniac, not the Maniac from the 1980s, but the Maniac from way back in the day, The Last Man on Earth, as well as The Last Woman on Earth, Little Shop of Horrors with Jack Nicholson. We'll check that out. The Screaming Skull. I mean, there's a lot of movies on here. Tormented, The Vampire Bat. Lots of films I want to give a watch and review a little bit further down the road from now. But I did want to review at least 2 movies from it, and Nosferatu and The Phantom of the Opera. And Nosferatu is a film that I had watched twice before. The first time I watched it, I was very young. I had seen the black and white version. I believe it was on like Hulu or Netflix or something like that. And I checked it out, and I was so young that, I was kind of like, oh, where's the audio? And, it's so old. So I stopped watching it. And then about a year ago, I had rewatched it fully. And I'd seen the colorized and the audio dubbed version of the film, which I thought was pretty good. There were certain scenes where it wasn't really colored the best, or it wasn't really dubbed the best, but for what it was a pretty decent way to watch the movie. And today I went old school. I watched black and white, silent version, where it had the little title things that you would read the text in, which is pretty cool. And to be honest, guys, watching it today, I was very impressed with it. I thought the movie, for being how old this movie is, this movie holds up very well nowadays, at least for me, at least. For me, not only is Nosferatu a very important film for vampire history or horror film history, it's one of the more important films for film history. If you look at it, this movie is one of the more better quality silent films from back in the early 30s and 20s, back when movies really started getting made. This was a very high quality film from back in the silent era. And it's one of the more popular ones from the silent film era. And I think this movie is just nowadays so overlooked, so underrated. Not a lot of people talk about Nosferatu. And I love Dracula from 1933, 32, something like that. Bela Lugosi Dracula, I love that film, but that movie definitely overshadows this movie a lot. And for me, Nosferatu is a very important film, and I feel it's very underrated. I feel like not a lot of people talk about this movie nowadays, and it's a shame because the movie honestly is pretty good. Now, if you're not a fan of silent films, or if you're not used to watching silent films, it will definitely be a little bit weird. Um, for me, this time, it wasn't really that bad because I'd seen it once before, and I believe I had watched a silent film before as well. I just can't remember what it was. So I was a little bit used to silent films, and to watch this movie again, it was honestly pretty impressive. It held up very well. And Nosferatu, I feel like what separates it from other films from that era is that I feel like the director really paid close attention to the details of the movie. The direction was very well done. The scenery was very nice. The creepiness of the movie was done well. There was definitely some points in the movie that, could still be considered scary nowadays. And I like the way that he utilizes the atmosphere, how it can be really beautiful at certain points, and then it can be very menacing and dark and creepy at other points. And judging this movie for acting is a little bit more different than judging a nowadays horror film for acting because obviously there's no audio to it, so I can't judge it by dialogue. I can only judge it by actions and movements and stuff like that. And for the most part, a lot of the cast did a really fantastic job. And of course, obviously, the best actor in the movie is Max Schreck, who played Nosferatu, or Count Olaf, or Count Dracula, which I'll get into. But he's definitely the best actor in the movie because he really brought this really awesome presence to the film. And it was very menacing, it was very dark, it was very creepy. And when he was on screen, you really felt the intensity coming from this character. So I really was a big fan of Nosferatu in this movie. Max Schreck did a great job. And the film was actually directed by, what was it? F.W. Murnau. And the movie has a very basic storyline. I mean, you can probably say that. It's basically about this guy. It's not the guy from Dracula. His name is Hutter, and you find that he sort of works for the same character from Dracula. I forgot his name, but I'm trying to see if I can find his name real quick. I'll be right back, guys. I'm going to see if I can find his name again. So I believe the character's name was actually Renfield, and Renfield sends Hutter to deliver these papers to Nosferatu for a house across the street from Hutter's house. And the reason that Renfield is doing it is because, he's already crazy and whacked out. He's under the control of Olaf, and he wants to get this plague spread to where he's at, because wherever Nosferatu goes, the plague follows. And I really like that idea. That's definitely a very good touch to this movie, is that wherever Nosferatu goes, it seems the entire environment is sort of affected by it, and there's this plague, and I just really like that. And Hutter goes to Transylvania, goes to the castle, finds Olaf, gives him the papers, Olaf signs them and whatever, finds out that Olaf is a vampire, and Olaf leaves to go to where Renfield is, and also to where Hutter's girlfriend is. And basically, when Nosferatu gets there, Hutter is also there. And his girlfriend, was that Nia? Was it Nia? Can't remember, was it? Oh, was it Ellen? I thought it was Nia or something like that. Ellen pretty much sacrifices herself until Nosferatu comes over, and she ends up saving the town from this plague because the sun comes up and it kills Nosferatu. And this movie, I feel, even though it has a basic storyline, I mean, for the storyline of the time that this movie was made, it was very impressive because nowadays it's very basic, but for the time that this movie was made, back in the 1920s, there was not a lot of stories that had, probably this much detail in them. And I don't know, the movie just has really great energy to it. If you're a big fan of like, you know, early 1920s, 1930s silent films, you're gonna really enjoy it. The idea of having the very first screen adaptation of Dracula is very cool. It's a very historic film. Going back and watching it again, I felt that it wasn't really that slow. There was points in the movie where it was hard to get through, but for the most part, it went by at a decent pace. Now, is it completely perfect? No. There are certain shots in the movie that will skip or will not function right. Like, let's say Hutter is right here. It'll skip to right here, and he won't be seen walking. It'll just sort of skip up to here. Or it'll be very grainy, it'll be very dirty, the frame will be very dirty, and you won't really get to see what's going on too much. Um, there are certain parts in the movie where there's a lot of cuts. Like, it'll cut back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and that kind of got a little bit annoying because it was like, oh yeah, here's Van Helsing, then over here is Hutter, and over here Nosferatu, and then over here is Hutter's girlfriend, or his wife, back to Hutter, back to Nosferatu, and then it's like it goes back and forth towards the end of the movie, and I don't know, it kind of got a little bit annoying. I was like, oh, come on. And then also it cuts back to Renfield and him escaping, only to get captured again. Um, so that got kind of annoying. Also, not really a big fan of the music they chose for the movie. The music was just very, very not loud, but just very overdone, And literally, I began the movie and I could not get past maybe 3 or 4 minutes. I'm like, I gotta shut this off. This is just freaking. Ugh. So I turned it off, and honestly, watching it with no sound is a little bit more better because it's instead of hearing that loud and obnoxious music, it's silent, it's creepy, it's to the point. So I like that. And the movie, I mean, it just had a lot of care put into it. It had a lot of emotion put into it. It had a lot of just heart put into it by the director. And I've heard different stories about F.W. Murnau and how he was sort of obsessed with the movie getting made and, different stories. But the movie is well made, and I can say that about the movie. It is a very well made movie for its time. And I am aware that there's a Nosferatu remake, which I haven't seen yet. There's Salem's Lot, which has a similar vampire. Don't know if it has a connection to this movie, but it does have a very similar vampire to this film. And there's also the film Shadow of the Vampire, which I have seen, and it's honestly pretty decent. For what it was honestly a pretty decent film. Where it's the supposed, it's the making of Nosferatu, and he was really a vampire, but, it is what it is. It's a pretty fun movie. And Nosferatu, I mean, it's honestly a pretty good movie. It goes by at a decent pace. There's a few parts of the movie that are pretty slow, but for the most part, it is pretty good. Also, another thing that kind of bugged me is that whenever there's a title call or like a title thing on the screen where it says what dialogue was being said, it's like there for like a whole minute. And I'm like, maybe 20 seconds at most is all we needed. Not like a whole minute. Probably not literally a whole minute, but you know what I mean? It's up there for a while. And whenever there's letters being read or anything like that, I mean, the title call is like right there. It's there for like a minute almost. So that got kind of annoying, but honestly, most of those problems are like little nitpicks. Little problems, not really too much of a big deal. But the movie is really good, and it's very interesting, and it's very historic. And I think it's one of the more better films from the silent film era, and it's a very good movie in the vampire films of the vampire genre. I think it's a really, really awesome historic piece from way back in the day. There are certain things in this movie that really work well even nowadays. First of all, the design of Count Olak or Nosferatu, as some say, but how it's like more of a rat design, the pointy nose, the teeth, the ears, the facial features, the tall slimness, and the overbearing, evilness of this character was very well handled. And, you know, for the time that it was made, I mean, you have a part in the movie where there's literally lots of blood coming out of this guy's finger, and there's a part in the movie where they actually see a dead body. Not graphic or anything like that, but, there's the captain of the ship and he's laying there dead, and you actually see the dead body. It's like, holy crap. Back in the day, this had to have been very, very controversial. And I like the idea. I really like the idea of, in this movie, how it's a little bit more different than the other Dracula movies. First of all, this is the first movie to have Count Olaf die from sunlight, and that was introduced in this movie, and I like that. I also like how wherever Olaf goes, disease follows, death follows, and overbearing evil follows. Rats follow that carry plagues. I like that idea. It's a very good, different approach to a vampire film. And of course, this movie, I forgot to mention the backstory about this movie. This movie was made, supposed to be an adaptation of Dracula, but they could not get the rights, so F.W. Murnau pretty much switched around some things. Like, instead of Renfield going to Transylvania, he sends the actual main guy in the movie to Transylvania. And instead of Dracula, it's Olaf, even though in this version that I've seen, it still says Dracula. Now, I don't know if it was just this version or if I just didn't notice it before, but they still call him Dracula, and it's like, shocking they didn't get still copyrighted for that. But instead of Dracula, it's Olaf, and, instead of Renfield going to Transylvania, it's Hutter. And, it is a little bit more different than the other Dracula adaptations, but at the same time, it's still very similar. You still have Renfield. You still have Van Helsing. Van Helsing, very minor role in the movie. Mainly, only time you see Van Helsing is in a college, explaining to these kids or these students about, oh, this is plants and plants with vampires and how these are vampires. That's all you see of Van Helsing. Van Helsing doesn't even help the characters in the movie. It was funny. I'm like, well, there's Van Helsing, but he's just in a college talking to the students. That's about it. So if you're going to for Van Helsing, I mean, he's there, but he's not really in the main plot. He just sort of off to the side. Honestly, there's really no point to even showing Van Helsing besides, oh, it's Van Helsing. So you have that. But, the movie for what it is a pretty good movie. It is well made. I love the poster that I'm probably going to be using for this thumbnail, where it's like the giant version of Nosferatu, and it's like a rat. It's like more of a rat than it looks like in the movie. It's like really like the rat features. He's giant. He's standing up, and it says Nosferatu. I freaking love that poster. And I wanted to bring that up because when I seen that poster, I'm like, wow, it's actually a pretty creepy, scary poster, and it looks kind of eerie. But I love that poster. I'll be using that in the thumbnail of this video because I love that poster. It's just creepy looking, it's eerie looking, and it's well made. But the movie had effort put into it. It's very historic. I really enjoyed it. I think it's underrated. It needs to be heard of more. It needs to be talked about more. It's, one of the more important films in film history in general, not just in horror film history, not just in vampire history, because it is important in those histories, but altogether it's one of the most important films in history. So if you haven't seen Nosferatu, give it a watch. It's definitely very good. If you're not used to silent films, you might be a little bit bored with it, but overall, if you're into silent movies, Nosferatu is a really great film. But anyways, guys, figured I'd come back today and do a review for you guys. Tomorrow I'll be doing a review for Phantom of the Opera. Hope you guys enjoyed, and that was my review for Nosferatu. So hope you guys enjoyed. The Explorer of Horror is out. See you guys later.